how many of you were here in the session just now? How many repeats do we have? Okay, so about 2/3 repeats. So as I said a few minutes ago, this is part 2 of our collaboration at the Bocas Lit Fest with the National Museum and Art Gallery this year. This session is called Objects of Memory, and as I promised, we've got some objects from the museum collections, one of which is already sitting on stage because it's quite big, and the others are sitting in the front row. And what we've done is we've collaborated with the staff at the National Museum and Art Gallery to choose these 4 objects. And each one has been paired with a contemporary writer to do a new piece. And all we told them, the entire brief was just do a piece that is in some way inspired by or responds to your object. We left the format of it up to them. We left it up to them whether it was fiction or non-fiction. The pieces are all quite different. So in a few minutes, I'm going to introduce the writers to you one by one. But before we start, I'm just going to ask Daniela Carrington, who is the curator at the National Museum and Art Gallery, to come and say a couple of words, just to say maybe why they're doing this with us, why they decided to come to Bocas. And so please welcome her up on stage.
Good day, everyone. So on behalf of the Ministry of Culture and Community Development, who is, one of the sponsors for the Bocas Lit Fest, really happy that we were able, through the National Museum and Art Gallery, to collaborate with Bocas because we want to see museum issues and objects come into public discourse. I mean, judging from the way how people reacted to the panel discussion, we see that it's very important. It's very important and relevant to our everyday lives. And I wanted to take particularly the idea of personal stories and personal narratives as an important takeaway, which kind of segues into what this event is about. It's about how do we then interpret what our collections, what our items mean to us, and how do we rewrite or rethink these narratives within our context, whether it be a context that reflects our personal stories, our personal histories, or our communities. So it's really a great opportunity that we get to be collaborating with the Bocas Lit Fest, and we hope to continue that collaboration, and I really hope that you enjoy the offering in the Objects of Memory event that is going to proceed. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Daniela. Now, one of the things that I found really fascinating about these objects is you might think that, okay, they're going to choose the most valuable, the most expensive, the most spectacular things in their collection. So I don't know what that might be. Perhaps if it was a different kind of museum, it might have been the crown jewels. It might have been a coronet, an amazing piece of jewelry, an incredible piece of artwork. But instead, what I found really interesting is that the 4 objects they chose are all, in a sense, domestic objects. One maybe a little less domestic, which we'll get to, but 3 of them, I'm sure some of you can see there's a large rifle in the front row. But the other objects are all things that some of you might even have samples of in your own house. Maybe these are things you've inherited from past generations. They're kind of humble objects, but they're important because they tell a story about us, about Trinidad and Tobago, about the people who live here, who have lived here. And so, the stories we're going to hear bring these objects to life, as Daniela says. They're not just, objects of metal or wood. Motilal Boodoosingh. Let me tell you a little, going to be very brief bios for everybody because we really want to get to the stories. So Motilal is the author of 4 collections of short stories. His most recent book is called Aji or Nani Kahanis, Stories of My Grandmothers and More. The object that he's been paired with is up on the plinth, and it is an ice shaver of the kind that people would have used in their houses when you bought a big block of ice from the ice house or something like that to shave it down to maybe make a homemade version of snow cone or ice cream or something like that. And Motilal has come in costume to share his story, which are basically personal recollections inspired by this object. So please let's welcome him up on stage.
Okay, I'll be talking about press and snowball. Snowball and press, I have the best. It's like rainbow on ice for citizens so nice. With guava and cherry to melt all your worry. Best syrup in town to cool this heat down. First, he shaved the ice and then pressed it into a small galvanized cup to maintain the conical shape, allowing for a head on top. Next, he dipped it in a pan containing a red syrup and, turning it over, dipped it in another pan with yellow syrup, and presto, you have been presented with a press. Press, so called because one has to press the shave ice to compact the particles together. Press and snowball vendors were called presso. Now I'm going to tell you something about presso. Presso from my village rode a bike with a large tray in front, just like the double vendor of today. A wet rice bag was wrapped around the block of ice, which also had an inner lining of white flour bag, both to keep the ice from melting too quickly. In another compartment were 2 lion baking powder pans. One contained red guava syrup and the other yellow barbadine. Penny for a press, and for another cent, you could top the head off with 2 twirls of condensed milk from one of the tins next to the syrup. And boy, you're going your way sucking one of the most amazing snacks to beat the Trinidad heat. The ice shaver works like a hand jack plane used for smoothing wood, but has an enclosed compartment to retain the shavings and also to serve as a measure for a press. There is a blade that can be adjusted and sharpened, and a lid to allow the shave ice to exist. The model I have, passed down from my grandfather to my father to me, is an Husqvarna Reliance, which was made in Sweden. What are the skills needed to become a professional pressman or presswoman, worthy of being called presso? You need the skill and technique that comes with practice to make the perfect press or snowball. Food handling knowledge is also required. Blade adjustment and ice temperature have to be considered. Too cold can be brittle, and too warm can be mushy. Also, presso must dress neatly with a white shirt, white apron, and cap, and practice good customer relations and hygiene. Fresh syrup must be prepared every day, and condensed milk should not be kept for long. Now, our presso was a young man of about 24. Handsome and ambitious, he worked diligently. He had to compete with Julia, the ice cream lady, and also Poach, the pallet man. Julia usually sold by the junction under John's shop, while Poach put a hand card singing, "Palalalet, pallet." As he rode a bike, Presso was able to reach the customers first, and as our parents could only afford one treat, we usually had the press. Besides, we all felt that neither the pallet nor the ice cream could compete with the press and snowball. Presso used to laugh and wave his ice shaver, saying he shaved off the competition. While the palletman had a handheld bell which accompanied his palalalet cry, Miss Julia would every now and again repeat, "Ice cream, cream ice cream." Both did all right, but Presso's business flourished. Unlike the traditional bicycle bell, which was shaped half a globe and make the customary ting-a-ling sound, Presso's bell was a full split globe, but without the finger lever to activate the ring. A spin of the globe resulted in a long, melodious ringtone, ring-a-ling-a-ling-ling-ling, that Radhika said was music to her ears. Radhika was 18, and her mother said that she was too big to want press and snowball. Yet she never failed to come out when she heard Presso bell ring. With her enamel cup and spoon, she would ask for a snowball with milk, which cost 4 cents. Presso always managed to put half a shaver extra in her cup, an extra spoonful of syrup, and an additional tool of condensed milk. Once, Radhika, after putting a spoonful of snowball in her mouth, remarked, "Presso boy, this snowball so sweet." Presso replied, "But not as sweet as you, my dear," causing her face to redden as she blushed. Presso thought, Radhika could ring my bell any time. And so their friendship grew. Not long after, Radhika became Mrs. Presso. Now we're going to tell you about another fella called Bill. Bill Bechan ran the parlor next to the Suchitris Hindu School. In addition to the regular sweets, soft drink, chewing gums, etc., he also sold press and snowball. He also sold shave ice with milk for a penny, although I felt his condensed milk was a little off. He wielded that shaver with a flourish, just as Headmaster Ramrup waved his whip while conducting bhajans in the morning assembly. I thought he was not as spick and span as Presso, as he wore a sleeveless, dingy-looking vest when he made our press and snowball. Sometimes my teacher, Mr. Maniram, took out his glass from his cupboard at lunchtime and asked me to get him a snowball. I would get the 1 cent change from the 5 cent coin he gave me. When I knew no one was looking, I quickly took 2 big sips. I passed common entrance at 11 and was assigned to Mod 2nd San Fernando. On my last day at Suchitris Hindu, I took a snowball on credit from Bill. I pelted fly with the ice shaver. Dean who attended penal government said the shaver flew to fly. Fortunately, he only suffered a glancing blow. The shaver, however, hit a stone and the lid was separated from the body. Chumlum, who was more concerned about her shaver than fly, could not find the pin that held the lid together. And all sales were canceled for that day. Mr. Jacob, the principal, used a nail as a substitute for the pin, and the shaver worked perfectly for many years. Them things strong too bad. I have many more stories about press and snowball and those essential ice shavers that need them, but I will leave that for another time. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
So again, let's give another round of applause for Motilal Boodoosingh. And he wins the prize for costume this morning. So our next artifact is, in some ways, the most sinister one. It is that rifle that's being positioned up on the plinth right now that you can see here on the screen. I don't know if the museum knows exactly who that rifle belonged to or how it was used or if it ever killed someone, but the writer who has written the piece about it certainly has some ideas about what is possible. So we're going to hear now from Camille Hernández-Ramdwar. Camille is a Trinidadian-Canadian author and scholar, lived in Toronto for quite a while, is back in Trinidad now. She's a fiction writer. She's the author of the short story collection, Sweet as Sugar. And let's hear what she has to say about this rifle. Please welcome Camille.
Is it still morning? Good morning, good afternoon. All right, so the rifle. This story is called Wolfgang Rides Again. It was 1848, and I was hot off the Prussian factory assembly line, the latest model of weaponry, when I was issued to Leopold, a middle-class military student in Berlin. It was a tumultuous time in Prussia, in all of Europe, the springtime of nations. From Italy to France to Prussia and Austria, Middle class and poor people were rebelling against the monarchies, the feudal lords, the aristocrats. Leopold was all of 17. And while he started off that March day protecting the interests of the ruling class, uniformed in a crowd of thousands of protesters, many of them young students like himself, and while the military far outnumbered the riotous throng, it was when he heard the 2 rogue gunshots ring out that mayhem ensued. Leopold ignored the orders from his superiors to shoot into the crowd. Somehow, he managed to abscond, strip off his uniform, and join the revolutionary side. While Leopold's family had started off poor, they had risen in rank as merchants, so Leopold knew both the sensation of lack and the taste of a comfortable life. For several months, he'd watched his fellow Berliners either dying of starvation in the streets or rioting for food. So that fateful March day, Leopold gladly joined the movement for a more equal society, a unified Germany, a republic of the people, by the people, and for the people. Deserting the army and joining the side of the revolutionaries, however, put Leopold's family in danger, and we had to flee Prussia. But not before Leopold had one last tryst with his sweetheart, Françoise Meyer, a half-French jeweler's daughter. By the light of a single candle, Leopold carved her initials into me while she lay naked in his bed, her eyes like devouring coals. Leopold was going to join his brother in Trinidad, a small island far away in the tropics where his brother was a cocoa planter. So I crossed the Atlantic Ocean a virgin, never having taken anyone's life. All Leopold had used me for was target practice. We were settling into life in the tropics nicely, Leopold learning the ropes of cocoa production from his brother and traveling around the island looking for a suitable estate to buy for himself when an urgent letter arrived from Françoise. She was with child. She missed him terribly. Was he just going to abandon her? Leopold immediately made arrangements to send for her, explaining that they could marry in Trinidad. It would be much easier, as big-bellied brides were quite commonplace on the island. Leopold and Françoise were married in the big Roman Catholic church on the hill, and a month later, their son, Wolfgang, was born. I knew right from the start that this boy was going to be trouble. By the end of the rainy season, we moved into our new home into the Santa Cruz Valley. Leopold kept me behind the front door during the day and next to the bed he shared with Françoise at night. As soon as Wolfgang could crawl, he would trundle up to me and run his chubby little fingers over his mother's initials carved into my stock. Then his piercing eyes would seek out his mother, wherever she may be, and focus only on her. He could sit there for hours, doing nothing more. Leopold was riding the estate all day and unaware of his son's odd behavior. When Wolfgang turned 7, Leopold began taking his son into the forest to hunt for game, tattoo, agouti, small deer. From the time Wolfgang cocked me up on his shoulder and took aim, my whole energy shifted. I wanted blood. I wanted to cause death. I wanted the power of being able to open up whole new realms, portals, the doors between matter and spirit. Wolfgang's aim was astounding. It was as if he had been born for this. Even though I was now taking lives, small animals, as we all know, do not count. By the time Wolfgang was in his teens, the cocoa boom hit Trinidad, and Leopold was filthy rich. Wolfgang, being the only son and heir, was lavishly spoiled. The finest clothes from Paris, a manservant, prized thoroughbred racehorses for the track, and a Paso Fino stallion imported from Puerto Rico to show off with. Leopold threw a grand ball for Wolfgang's 18th birthday, with all the wealthy planter families from miles around attending. As time went on, it was obvious that Wolfgang was more interested in carousing, gambling, and whoring than learning how to run his father's estate. Françoise kept trying to introduce Wolfgang to nice French Creole girls in the hopes that a romance would spark. She wanted to see her son married. She wanted grandchildren. But all Wolfgang would say was, "Mutter, you know I only have eyes for you," while taking his mother's hand, kissing the back of it, and batting his curly lashes. Leopold thought maybe his son didn't like women at all, until one day he encountered Wolfgang pointing me at a young Cocopayo girl in the workers' quarters. He was forcing her to undress and forcing me into places on her body I didn't want to go. Leopold cried out and rushed his son. Wolfgang calmly lowered me, and the girl ran off. Father and son stared at each other, Leopold aghast, Wolfgang unperturbed. Then they parted ways, and the incident was never spoken of again. It wasn't long after this that Leopold contracted yellow fever and succumbed, leaving Wolfgang the master of the estate and his mother's keeper. He tried to take his father's place in his mother's bed, claiming it was for her protection, citing that he needed to be near me in my post next to the bed, the same way his father had slept with me at arm's reach. Françoise told him it was unnatural for mother and son to sleep in the same bed, and so Wolfgang moved a small cot into her bedroom and placed it at the foot of the four-poster instead. It did not surprise me then when Françoise began bringing another man into her bedroom on the nights when Wolfgang was busy fetting around the island, especially at carnival time when the French Creoles held their grand balls. Françoise's lover was Henri Desanges, a colored planter from Maracas Valley. One Sunday, after various excursions, the lovers overslept and Wolfgang encountered them. He quietly walked around the bed, taking in the tableau of his mother's naked, curvaceous body entwined with Henri's muscular one, gently reached for me, prodded Henri in his buttock, rousing him, and as Henri leapt up, shot him dead. My virginity was over. I don't know what Wolfgang did with Henri's body, but Françoise left the estate that day, never to return. Her departure unleashed the deepest depravities in Wolfgang, and I became his partner in crime. Our first bloodletting had opened a maelstrom of psychopathy. Wolfgang joined the Trinidad Rifle Association, a new organization that encouraged the sons of good families to train as volunteer corps, one that could supplement the military as need be, to ensure law and order was upheld against the barbaric Negroes and coolies. It was great fun for me to finally be put through my paces in the weekly excursions to the training grounds, and then eventually to be called out to see real action. In 1881, the whole island learned about the tumultuous Camboulet riots, and Wolfgang was ecstatic when the militia requested the services of the volunteer corps the following year to help suppress the Jamet hordes in town. But alas, Wolfgang and I spent that night bored to tears as the crowds were substantially subdued from the previous year. Wolfgang was so frustrated that he followed one of the drunken revelers into a lonely truck after the festivities were over, rode up on him, and shot him in the back. My second kill. Many nights, Wolfgang would spend hours polishing me, paying special attention to my stock and the carved initials of his mother, murmuring over and over, "How could you betray me with that mongrel?" He would cry bitter tears, and then after imbibing numerous snifters of brandy, would take me hunting for those he referred to as subhumans. My kill count increased. The subhumans were increasingly becoming restless and agitated in Trinidad, and this only aggravated Wolfgang more. In 1884, all attention turned to the south of the island for the Musulman festival known as Jose. We hopped the train to San Fernando, where a great melee ensued, and Wolfgang brandished me again and again, firing wildly into a crowd of both coolies and Negroes, unconcerned where my bullets might penetrate. After this escapade, his joy knew no bounds. Inevitably, Wolfgang in quick time squandered the family fortune and increasingly turned to drink. One night, he fell off his spooked horse and broke his neck. Françoise, now elderly and frail, became the inheritor of his possessions, including me. I was locked in a steamer trunk and stayed there for many years until one day somebody donated me to the National Museum. Thus began a new chapter in my life. I am put on display in a glass case in a brightly lit room, and many people pass to look at me with great interest. Hundreds of school children file past me year after year, their eyes wide and curious, and they all look like the children of the people whose lives I took. But Wolfgang, dead many years and entombed in La Perouse Cemetery, also comes to see me. He comes to harass me, insisting I go with him on his adventures. We fly up into the hills of Laventie, of Tunapuna, of Arima, of Caranage, of Santa Cruz, the back roads of Chaguanas and Valencia. Anywhere Wolfgang can find young men whose minds are weak from puncheon and doctored weed. To chain them up in his bloodthirstiness, he rides them, sometimes for days, whispering in their ears, telling them how, when, and where to kill. But never why. Why is never a question that is asked. Sometimes when Wolfgang is extra demented, he whispers in the ears of young boys and girls who are playing with their replica AK-47s, rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat, handling them like big machines, slinging them on their bony shoulders and pointing them to the sky. Most of these children can't hear Wolfgang's voice, but then there are the ones whose eyes are already vacant, who look like they haven't bathed, their hair unkempt, the ones stretching a small hand when no one is looking to reach for a green five-finger or a half-ripe starch because their bellies are empty, because their adults forgot to feed them. These ones invite Wolfgang in wholesale, glad at least someone is paying them attention. And even though it is not me who is taking the kill, there is still an energy exchange that satisfies all parties, a cosmic vortex involving the sacred sacrifice of innocence, a bloodletting that ensures that the unseen but ever-present demons are satiated. Thank you.
Thank you, Camille, for that chilling story that reminds us that things going on around us every day, that we read about in the newspapers every day, have their roots in our history, and that objects like this sometimes can be the stimulus for us to remember where things come from. So please, let's thank Camille again for her story and her reading. So the third object that we're going to hear about this morning is actually a pair of objects. It's an enamel jug and basin. And I feel like maybe that is the thing that some of you are most likely to have in your house. Because I feel like I saw something like that in my grandmother's or my great-aunt's house many, many years ago. Very simple domestic object that you would use maybe in the bathroom or the kitchen. And the writer who's going to share his story inspired by this object is Vindhar Suraj. So Vindhar, former president of the Writers' Union of Trinidad and Tobago until very recently, is a fiction writer. He's currently working on his first novel, which incorporates local folklore into a contemporary setting. And I have to say, I've had a sneak preview of the book, and I'm looking forward to it being published. So let's welcome him, and let's hear what he has to say about this jug and basin.
Afternoon, everyone. So, in writing this story, I went over the word limit that Bocas gave me. So the story is, I won't have time to read the full story, but talk to me after if you want to find out how it ends. The name of it is Precious Tokens. Than once. Revati, I don't know what you did, but your will for life stronger than diamond. I always take them words to heart because she used to wear plenty diamonds. Yes, I never going to forget that lady, Mrs. Magdalena Eliza Masood. For most of my life, I work for the Masoods, and even the house and land I have now come from them. Well, from she, really. Many things I owe to Miss Eliza. That's the name she always prefer, at least for me. Okay, Revati, time to get up again. Oh, God, yes, I stand up. Taking my time, I brace against the wooden walls and reach inside. I learned the hard way to leave my coffee cup on the table next to the rocking chair. More than once, I break a cup trying to get up while holding it. But plain young girl not helping me, and I have nobody to send out the road or to the market. Every week I get a few groceries from a yard boy working for the new generations of Masoods. Even in my old age, the Masood family still helping me, and I don't want to take advantage. Inside, I go by the kitchen counter. Waiting for me is a large enamel washing bowl filled with water that come from one of the barrels outside, soaking up the dew whole night. I dip my aching hands in, wishing it was colder, but enamel can only do so much. My wrists feel better in cold water, but there is pain in cold weather. Life funny, yes? I already get up early and cook. It's just me, so it's not plenty work. A little boiled potato and provision, and I good. I take out my food on a small plate and eat slow on the small couch next to the kitchen. My room on the left, after the couch is the back door, and that's the whole house. Front to back, it's just about 30 feet, but is enough for me, and I happy. And when night reach and I out of this body, I more happy. While I eating, I lean back comfortable, looking at an enamel jug on the table in front of the couch. Is a matching set with the washing bowl. Them two things is my most cherished gifts from Miss Eliza. I still remember her words when she gave me them. Revati, the jug and bowl remind me of you, strong, sturdy, and pretty. The patterns on them really pretty in truth, a bunch of light pink flowers and bright green leaves hanging from thin branches. Everything on a white background, and around the top is a clear blue like the sky. Miss Eliza tell me she father went all the way to America to buy them for she as a wedding gift. She never used them and decided to pass them down to me. I feel really special knowing she decided to give them to me over she own children. I can't help but smile. We really had an unusual friendship. Everything I didn't have, she had it. Money, status, a good family. And poor me, I had to drop out from school to sell in the market to help Pa mind my brothers. While I work and work and work, my two brothers went to school, get their education, jobs, and wives, leaving me alone with Pa in a rickety house close to the San Juan River. Life was hard during them days, but somehow I managed, selling in San Juan Market to take care of Pa. That's where I meet Miss Eliza. Well, in truth, she come up to me, checking my lettuce and greens, but she was watching me too. I wonder what she was thinking about me, this brown-skinned girl with long hair and an old house dress. She come back a few more times, chatting and asking me about my life. Somehow, it feel good to talk to this tall, well-dressed, fair-skinned woman. In time, she asked me if I wanted to come Port of Spain with her, to live and work in she big fancy house as a maid. At first, I tell she no, but she keep asking, and one day I say yes. It's really because of what Pa do that make me agree. Somehow, a old man like he pick up a woman, and next thing, she end up in we house, living like a she father billet for she. I thought the poor man used to wait on me to come home and cook and rub down his back with coconut oil, but it wasn't so at all. And while I didn't finish school, I not stupid. I know once she there, I have to leave that place. So Miss Eliza was the way to do it. A strong breeze blew through the open back door, breaking me away from the memories. The door slammed shut, and the vibration shook the enamel jug. I put on my food quick and stretched for the empty jug, holding it close like I would hold a child, while the wind just blowing. Lord, please, I don't want anything to happen to this jug. The day after Miss Eliza gave me it and the bowl, she tell me something that bring tears to my eyes. She say, Revati, I know what you do in the night, you know. So I have to ask for one thing. please don't use that bowl or jug to hold your skin, okay? Fill them with water, juice, anything else but that. And when you change, feel free to suck on my husband. Ha ha ha! Well, I didn't know what to say, and then she'd leave the room. No one ever in my life had accepted me for what I was. But when Miss Eliza tell me that, I feel like she did. After, she started asking me with a big smile on she face, "How was your flying last night, Revati?" And I used to just nod or say, "Good," and leave it at that. When I was living with my father, I know he didn't like it when I turned to fire. Plenty nights I come back in the house, refreshed, my blood and body feeling alive, and Pa waiting for me, keeping a flambeau lighting in the cramped room, watching me hard and shaking his head. The only times I see him vex so is when he watch me like that. He never understand the fire is part of me. Thank God my mother tell me the main things, how to change, what to do. She was just like me, but Pa didn't like she either. One day, I come back from elementary school and Ma nowhere around. I asked Pa and all he say was, "Your mother gone, she not coming back, consider she dead." After I hide and cry, I figure maybe she's still living. Maybe she went somewhere better. Maybe she would meet me flying in the sky. But I had no proof. I figure my father had to do something to make Ma leave. But again, I had no proof. Anyway, I don't want to think about he. The breeze finally stopped. The thing about living in the mountains is that you get plenty wind whether you like it or not. As the breeze died down, I think I hear something else. Somebody calling outside. "Morning, anybody home?" Well, this is real strange. Apart from the yard boy, I don't get no visitors. I bawl out, "I come in." I make my way to the front, slow. When I see who it is, my heart nearly stops. It's like I watching the male version of Miss Eliza, same height, skin color, and blonde hair. But his hair short, and the white shirt and black pants looking brand new, almost shining in the sun. But I recognize his face. "Edward?" Miss Eliza's grandson smiled. I can't explain it, but unlike his grandmother, his face have no warmth. His green eyes so different from Miss Eliza's hazel-colored ones. The last time I see him was about 15 or 20 years ago when he was a little boy. "You're Miss Revati?" he asked. "Yes, son. How your grandmother?" "That's why I came here, to tell you that she passed away yesterday in the hospital." Pause raised over my whole body. I don't know if the ringing in my ears coming from me or the breeze. "You mean Miss Eliza gone? She's no more?" Edward nodded. "Later today, we're going to bury her. The whole family will be there. If you like, one of the yard boys can come and take you to the church and the cemetery." I realize I still hold in the jug. This and the bowl is now my only mementos of my dear friend and former employer. I hold the jug tight to my chest. Thank you.
So is there anyone in the audience, maybe a non-Trinidadian, who does not understand what was going on there? Everybody knows what a sukuya is, right? Okay. Thank you very much. Let's give Vinda another round of applause to thank him for the story. Oh, we have someone who doesn't know. A sukuya is a character from Trinidad Tobago folklore. It's a woman. It's a version of a vampire. It's a woman who at night transforms into a ball of fire by removing her skin, flies out, finds people to suck the blood of, reinvigorates herself, as Vindhar described, and then comes back home and puts the skin back on. And usually there's a particular receptacle that the Sukuya will put her skin in. And if you want to find the Sukuya or get rid of her, you have to find that thing, find the skin when she's not wearing it, and according to tradition, sprinkle it with salt. Anyway, thank you, Vindhar. And as he said, if you want to know what happens next, you either need to wait till the story is published or you need to ask him. All right, so we've heard 3 pieces of prose, and we're going to move now to some poetry, to some spoken word poetry. So the final object is the one that's been sitting on stage the whole time, and it's now open up for you to see. It is a gramophone, a Victrola, not as portable as, record players that most of us might have had in our houses back in the 80s. I don't think unless you're a serious music enthusiast, nobody has a record player anymore. Everything is an MP3. But it's a Victrola. I think there's actually a record inside it. I don't know if it works. We're not going to try to play it. There we go, look. And
The recording is actually from a French Catholic choir in the early 1900s.
an early 20th century French Catholic choir recording is what came to the museum with the Victrola. Anyway, so to bring this object to life, we have Deneka Thomas. Deneka is a writer, performance poet, arts educator, the founder and creative director of Back on Leaf, and also a former National Poetry Slam champion. So please, let's welcome Deneka on stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. I love music. I grew up in a house with a man who swore by a song engineered to perfection, whose collection of records and cassettes spanned decades before he even came into existence, who built his own speakers and listened to his favorite song so loud that the entire neighborhood was forced to listen to. A man who even had the police called on him a few times because he did not know time. 5 a.m. were greeted with sermons of Barrington Levy, shaking the rooftops like earth tremors. He used to awaken everything that had the audacity to be asleep. For him, time did not exist. Only sound did. Only memory moving in circles. Before my father stacked vinyl like scriptures, before record players, before we learned how to rewind cassette tapes with our fingers or swing them around on pencils, before CDs, before aux cords stretched the back seats like lifelines, before Bluetooth, before we carried playlists in our pockets, there was a box, mahogany, a talking machine with a mouth that did not speak until you asked it to, a mechanical instrument that did not need electricity to make a joyful sound, a stubborn piece of equipment that was designed to never die, a gramophone, Victrola, a thing that could keep spinning even after the hands that made it eclipse, an old thing made timeless, eternal, like how I inherited my father's disbelief in the religion of silence, the way the gramophone taught the world that music could outlive bodies, that voices could refuse death, that memory could be pressed into something you could hold and play. It's 2026 and vintage back in. We used to meet history like this only through glass cases and museum labels, or if you were lucky enough, through a collector who was kind enough to let you look into the past they preserved today. People are seeking out old like it holds answers, giving antiques new lives in a world so digital and automated, like we are finally beginning to understand that some things should not be made convenient or instant, that quality suffers when things are too easy to replicate. I imagine the first time the Victrola was unboxed, how everyone in that room welcomed it with awe and reverence. everyone holding their breath, unsure if they were about to witness an invention or a miracle. How when the needle drops, they hear the crackle, and then the sound of the voice that come back from somewhere it was never supposed to return from, like a resurrection, traveling through time, from gramophone to my father to me, Victrola. You are the ancestor of every speaker my father ever built. You are the reason why, as a child, I felt longing and nostalgia for eras that were alive long before I was born, decades that didn't even know my name. You are the reason why a child in Belmont, Trinidad, could feel connected to a world far beyond them. I first learned what music is from the love of J.C. Lodge. Learned how to steal it on the side from Carleen Davis, why at 11, I was well acquainted with the 60s, 70s, and 80s. There's a richness in eras like this that cannot be replicated in the songs that we received like communion in the heartbreak that we felt but did not yet experience ourselves. I remember being as young as 7 and 8 and running around the house singing Al Green and Eddie Lovett on record like they were gospel, chanting Aretha Franklin hymns and dancing to the homilies of Hammond. We did not understand all of the lyrics, but we sang as if our lives depended on them, connected to those songs like they were made for us, old music, ministered in a language that only made sense when we got older, and lived experience translated it. Our heads were beneath the poverty line, but often we'd forget that we were drowning because hardship came like flood waters, but so did music, and we were happy to drink. We consumed half pint in pints, burned at 360 degrees of Billy Paul. We sang songs that were too big for our bodies, then grew up and realized them songs wasn't really made for children. Like Betty White telling us about her first time. Like Marvin Gaye asking questions we did not yet have the answer for. We grew up. And I know that for me, no matter how many new songs drop, nothing beats a good throwback, a good back in times jam, a good old school. All the tunes my father treasured that ushered him out of darkness like a prayer that I then turned to like praise. Victrola. You sit in a museum now, still, silent, protected from disappearance like an endangered species, but I do not see an object on the brink of extinction. I see the beginning of everything my father passed to me without saying a word. I see prized possession. The reason I stand here now in front of an audience, turning memory into sound, hoping that it lives beyond my breath, poems, joyful noises that can be carried beyond this room. And I stand here and wonder if years from now, if it will reach some child running around barefoot around the house, parroting lyrics they did not yet understand, but somehow need. I love music, but more than that, I love what it remembers. So I lean in closer than I'm supposed to, and I listen and feel. And somewhere between a needle and melody, between a father and his child, between past and present, between Victrola and my Apple Music subscription, something is still playing, and it sounds like home. Thank you.
Thank you again, Deneka, and for reminding us that even, these artifacts that they're, as you say, in a glass case, they're completely silent. If you're able to listen with your imagination and your memory, you can hear what they're trying to tell you. So please, let's thank again Deneka and all the other writers, Motilal, Camille, and Vindhar. Thank you for joining us in this session. I also want to say a big thanks to the National Museum and Art Gallery, and please give them some more applause. Thank you to Daniela Carrington, Jacqueline Mute, and their team, not just for helping us do this event and the preceding discussion, but for, going to the effort of bringing these things for us to see them. So perhaps if you don't crowd them too much, and if you'd promise not to touch, perhaps if anyone is curious about the artifacts while they're still here, you can get to take a slightly closer look. They're all up in front, but don't touch. All right, a couple of things. Oh, and the other thing I wanted to say is that if you enjoyed this event, the good news is that if all goes well, we're hoping it'll be the first in a series, because it will be some time before the museum building reopens, and they have many, 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 many objects in storage with many, many stories waiting to be unlocked. So we're hoping that this will be the first in a series of several events, first in a series of several writers' commissions, and maybe it will even end up in some kind of published form. So a couple quick things. We're taking a break here now in the fire station. The next event here is going to be at 1:30 p.m. Unfortunately, it's going to be me you'll have to see back then, because I'm going to be on stage interviewing two writers, Adalba Salas Hernandez and Christina Bendek, writers from Venezuela/Spain, Colombia/San Andres. So you can come back at 1:30 for that. But right now we've got our open mic Stand and Deliver, which is going on out in the Abercrombie Street Arcade. We've got some dramatic performances in the Library Rotunda. We've got lots of food and drink in the Festival Cafe, so there's no need for you to leave. Please stick around for the afternoon, enjoy yourself, browse the booksellers, all of that. Last thing. If anyone drove themselves here this morning and parked outside the police headquarters over there, yes, the police, there's some cars that are in the street in a place where the police do not want there to be. So I'm going to read out 4 license numbers for you. And if this belongs to you, you need to go and move your car. So PCF 4017.